Don't squander your life.
Tell me the truth, I want to know just where to look and how to go. I need to find true peace. I need to understand, to bring my suffering to an end.
Release the love I hold inside. Let me be true and never hide behind a face of fear or animosity. To break the chains of misery.
How to let go and just be free. The time is now, it's destiny. Surrender now that I have found a way to keep somehow more than a broken vow.
Let me always forever be on one accord, truth and me, abiding in sweet grace, the glow on my face, victorious to win the race. How to let go and just be free. The time is now, it's destiny. Surrender now that I have found a way to keep somehow more than a broken vow. The noble path, I walk it every day, and then I realize there's more to life than only bitterness and lies. I close my eyes. I found the way, the course that leads to ease. A liberating path that frees.
I found the way, a course that leads to ease, a liberating path that frees.
I will let go and just be free. The way it's clear, the victory. How to let go now that I've found a way to keep right now. A true, unbroken vow. Obtaining a human body is difficult. Death and impermanence are imminent. Samsara is suffering, but true Dharma is available now. Don't squander your life. You know, there's something about walking in the acknowledgement of the Dharma that brings a kind of joy that the world doesn't give you, so the world can't take it away. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. It's a way that we have to recondition ourselves and recondition our minds to be able to handle the vicissitudes of life. Thank you. Can't see you. Can you sit over here?
Yeah. Be right there.
Thank you. You look good to me.
Right.
And if we get in the habit of doing that, you'll see how we can actually change the condition of our mind by our willingness to step aside from where our mind is leading us. And so a question we can always ask ourselves when we're thinking about something is this a useful? Is it beneficial? When we talk about the right this and the right that, it doesn't just necessarily mean right in the sense of correct. It means right in the sense of helpful, useful, beneficial. Words are woefully inadequate to really explain the prajna of Dharma. I'll say wisdom, but it's so much higher than what we think of as wisdom that we leave the word basically untranslated. So for now, I'm saying wisdom, but just think, if you could think of the wisdom, the highest wisdom of all wisdoms, that's prajna. And it's something beyond our worldly concept, because it's beyond the quality of the ordinary mind. And so we know that we have this kind of ordinary mind, ordinary way of thinking. That's where we are in our spiritual evolution. We all, Papa used to say, "I am what I am." So we can have some patience with ourselves and with others when we're not flowing in our highest and our best way of looking at or holding something or even understanding something. We can only understand on the level that we understand. As much as we might want to understand it on a more profound level, a deeper level, as much as we might want to grasp something, if we don't get it, we don't get it. And this getting it is, although it may happen suddenly, it doesn't happen suddenly. It happens gradually, line upon line, precept upon precept, experience upon experience, here a little, there a little, and then suddenly we realize something, but we have to know that it wasn't sudden, you see. So that's why words are just absolutely useful. If we talk about something being sudden, we can really look and see that nothing is sudden. Although it just dawned on me, it it came through some process that we may not have been aware of, that we didn't know it was occurring, but when it reaches a tipping point, like that one last P that tips the scale, then we say, suddenly I realized something. But we have to know that it wasn't sudden. And sometimes we can learn something, and so we think we know it because intellectually we learned it, but we haven't had that prajna experience of it. So we say we know it, but we don't know it in its fullness. We don't know it in its most um, uh, right way, right being helpful, useful, beneficial, right like that. Not I'm right, you're wrong, right? So we don't really know it in that way. Sometimes we uh, experience something, but we don't have enough information that we can recognize the truth of what we experience. So you have these two things. Either you learn something and then you have a direct experience of the truth of it, or you have a direct experience and you don't know what just happened. You just know you had it. And so it's in these two ways that we come out misinformed, and maybe something is misunderstood. when we're learning something, when we're learning something and we have a real earnestness, we are not devoted. We are sincere, motivated, committed to. We really want to get it. We really, with all of our being, want to penetrate to the truth of something. That can be our most fragile time, and it can be fraught with danger. It carries the greatest danger. If I'm like just superficially investigating something, like, yeah, like I want to hear about it, but like I don't really care that much because I'm gonna go do so much. Sometimes like you just kind of have committed to something. You don't have to worry too much because you're not putting enough effort in for it to count. So if it doesn't work, this it doesn't work. If it does work, it does work. But when you really putting your all into something, it can be the most fraught with danger because you're feeding it with a certain degree of energy, and it's just going to turn out very good or very bad. The very is in there. And so it can be, it's kind of like the difference in walking over a hill, climbing over a hill, and climbing up of a mountain. One is taking more effort. The pathway is more extreme. The angle is, I watch some people who are rock climbing or mountain climbing, and you think of climbing the mountain going this way, but they're going this way, like straight up behind their heads and having to pull themselves up, just extreme. And that's a whole, excuse me, different thing than if somebody's just lollygagging and walking and taking a little hike over the hill. And so if that one falls, then it's not going to be as devastating as that one who has to throw the pick into and hoist himself up on a sheer mountain. It was one time when I was visiting Maureen. She lives in Arkansas. She lives in Missouri, but we went through Arkansas, Pioneer Deep, and we decided we'd look at a property there. I'm always looking at property, whether I'm just looking. I'm just always looking. And there was one for sale, an old hippie compound or something like that. And we went ahead and go up in these. But anyway, I saw for the first time in person, the only time, the Ozark, and they were like so beautiful. They were like the mountains that you see in Chinese paintings. They like sheer. They just go up like this. They're not like this with trees on. It's just rock, and they go up. It was so beautiful. I fell in love with those mountains. I wanted to buy that. Deepa said, "We are not moving here." He said, it was the area would be a little difficult, tough for us to live in. I mean, going in, there was another compound right across from the one that we looked at, and they had like a guard at the compound, not a guard. Would they be hillbillies?
They would be, they may be survivalists.
Yeah, that's what they were.
They're hard, really. Arkansas?
Mhm.
I went
Yeah,
to camp out there.
it was a survivalist group right across, and I mean, plenty of people wouldn't even get out the car. I'm like, I'm looking, said, I'm not getting out because I'm not moving here. um, and so the more sheer our investigation of the Dharma is, the more fraught it is with danger. That's it. Because it is powerful. It has power. If it had no power, no need. But it's powerful. So um, a question came up yesterday in Zosi's class that I wanted to go into a little bit more, because it's going to come up for us more and more as we are doing our Monday, Tuesday, and Friday, as we do our Tuesday and Friday class. And the more that we remember the Dharma expounded by Buddha Master. Like sometimes you hear something and you forget it and you hear it here. But now we've heard some things 100 times or more, and it has dropped in, and that wisdom now has become our wisdom. That understanding has become our understanding. And so we remember it, because now it's our own mind thinking in that way. It's not just what he told me, but my own mind has taken it up as my truth. And so we will have that thing in our mind, that Shakyamuni Buddha said such and such, or Buddha Master said such and such. Those are really the only two I basically quote. It's not that Jason Kappa and some of these others aren't great. I think they're great. Just I didn't know them. No, I didn't know them. But Buddha Master, I know. And Shakyamuni Buddha, I know by virtue of the realization of some of the things that he taught. But here's the problem. Our cultivation, what we know, depends upon, excuse me, I don't have a quote. What we know depends upon our own level of realization. So although something is said, it is understood on 17 different levels in here. It's understood from 17 different perspectives in this room today, because it's 17 people in here today. So we each have our own mind, and and we each have our own understanding, right?
Mhm.
So it's not that one thing was said, but it was understood in 17 different ways, depending on what might be going on in my life, depending on how much around that topic I knew before today, depending on how much of what I knew was correct before today, depending, there's just so many factors that our understanding is dependent upon. And so, because we're putting so much effort into really trying to make use of the Dharma in a beneficial way, there are going to be differences in agreement about how to apply what was just said, depending on what's going on in my life. depending on how I feel right now, depending on so many different things like that are individual. And so the Buddha master says that we have to begin to hold truth in a different way than we did in the beginning. Like if you're teaching your child something, you teach your child in absolutes so that they have no confusion. They don't have to think, just do what Mama said. They don't have to think about it. They just want you to, we just want you to do what we say because that's the best way I can keep you safe. But later on, you have to use your own mind to figure out what's happening in this situation. And if I was still saying to you, and you're 35, I would still say, just do what Bamba says, then I'm going to take you in the opposite direction, that you need to go. I won't be taking you towards greater clarity and maturity. I'll be taking you away from it. Do you understand what I mean? So it's like this, and this is how we train in the Dharma. So in the beginning, when we learn something, like we got it down because Mama said so. We have it down. And it's do this and don't do that. And generally, some of us parents followed it up with a penalty to make sure that you understand I'm not playing. And that penalty is exercised when you break that rule, because I'd rather have to correct you than you get out in the street and somebody who doesn't love you corrects you. So that's how we had to keep our children alive, because I came up in a time where not only could your parents beat you, but any neighbors between where you committed an offense and by the time you got home, I mean, they could beat you too. And of course, the police could beat you too. And of course, just anybody of a certain race could beat us, and there's not going to be any repercussions about that. And so to keep our children safe, we made sure that they understood the rule of law. They understood what they could do out in the street and what they couldn't do, and what they could say and who they could say it to, and what they couldn't say. And and uh, and this was the way that we protect our children. So the Dharma is also like a great mother. It protects us in this way. It just gives you absolutes. But as you go deeper in your cultivation, then you begin to understand that these things are not in absolutes, but they depend on circumstances. They depend on who's present. They depend on what's happened in the past. They depend on, I mean, there's so many factors that hardly anything then that you read or that you quote is absolutely the right thing for all time, for all people, in every circumstance. And and that's when you know that you're getting to the place. That's when you know that you're developing, that you're growing. And sometimes if you don't recognize this, you can start to feel insecure. You can doubt can rise, because you've heard something two different ways. Now, which way is it? Is it this way or is it this way? And doubt can arise because you know more than one way of looking at a thing. And instead of feeling insecure, one can, two things, should begin to feel more secure in their not knowing, because the knowing was elementary. The known thing was elementary. It's like just follow the rule, you know. But when you get to the place that you have to really think through a situation, like use your own mind about what's really happening here and how should I approach it, then you should know that you're growing. So it's almost what something looks like becomes the opposite of what it actually is. And a lot of times with our children, what something looks like from an adult perspective is it's actually the opposite of how it is when you think it through a little further, or when you have more experience, you know, uh, to be able to see the finite, the ness of a rule and the infinite possibilities of how that can be understood or walked out. So I'm saying this to encourage you and to kind of give some guidance about the dialogue that we have. Because now people are beginning to try to use their own wisdom, right? And part of using your own wisdom is that is expression of it. But the minute I have a thought in my head about the way something is, if you say something that's different than the way I'm holding it at this moment, then we think that either they're wrong, just out and out wrong, because they're thinking differently than me, or they don't get it. They have the, um, they have the juvenile understanding of it, but we have the mature understanding of it. And that's because we're still functioning from an ego base, that's all. But we know that we are expanding when not when we can allow a diversity of views, but when we can hold our truth without having to defend it. Yeah. Because the defense arises through what aggregate? Just think about the question.
Mind. Training, attachment.
Angry.
Who said that? Ding, 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 ding. Give her a prize through feelings.
Because I do it. Catching me, undoing.
Yeah, feeling arises, you know, and the feeling is tied to, our view, our opinion. So that's a key thing that you can look at. We're now at the place that we can not only have can recollect, can contemplate what mama said, but we can also hear something that challenges us to think about that too. Don't like just dismiss it offhand, but to think about that too, because maybe a bit of that will help expand my understanding. I'm not gonna, it's almost taking the position that nothing is all right or all wrong. And now we're starting to get into a space where the guardrails are down, that we can extend our territory. And there's something about knowing that there's more to know than just what I know. You know, it starts to feel really, really good. I mean, it starts to feel really, really right. One starts to feel more expanded and vaster. It's like breaking free from some chain or some confining space, that there's an openness to hear what others have to say and to be touched by, you know, some of these things get complicated. Like it talks about um, a bodhisattva having compassion for all beings in all worlds, not just compassion for us humans, but all beings in all realms. And then about a bodhisattva not having feelings in the way we think of feeling. So like where does compassion fit in if it's not tied to feelings? And there's a practice that we go through. In the beginning, we're trying to let go of all these feelings, this energy and motion that's tied to how I would feel as an individual self, and that's kind of how I regard how you would feel by how I would feel if that was said to me. And at that stage, when something is said that's designed to maybe straighten out of view, uh, somebody say, how'd you feel about that? Because it bothered them. So they're gonna busybody over here and say, well, how did you feel when she said that to you? I'm just telling you now how we do. And because we had a feeling about it. You see what I'm saying? We had a feeling about it. And if that person felt okay with it, then we might feel like we gotta help them because that was not okay. Because it wasn't okay with you. So we have to investigate and see how deep our feelings go. So we have contemplations we do to check ourselves to see how deep our feelings go. Like um, we care about you and all of that and for about 5 minutes. And then we're back on to whatever it was we were doing before, however we were thinking before, and that's the extent of our caring. So some of the practices that we do are to look at that. Like if that was your daughter, your wife or husband, somebody that you cared for, or even someone that you saw on the street, but your heartstring was pulled, would it be on your heart and mind for longer than 5 minutes? Or what would you do? How would you respond to whatever their problem is or their dilemma? And so that's one way that we might look at it, how would we respond? But then after we get really good at recognizing how self-centered we are, then it's time to tap on the other side. Then they have us not being attached to feeling. Then now we have to work on not taking things so personal. If we keep going in one direction, we go extreme. That's it. It's just about not going to extremes. And that's how we become very balanced so that we can ultimately take action based on the truth of something rather than how we feel about it. I don't have to, like if you're hungry, I don't have to feel any kind of way about it. If I have a capacity to feed you or to give you some money so you can get something to eat or to tell you where you can go where there's serving food or something like that. I mean, I don't have to feel any kind of way. It becomes no longer a motivation through feeling. It just becomes the action that's the result of understanding that condition. You see, so this is where we're trying to get. That's why when it talks about a bodhisattva, doesn't think this or that. A bodhisattva doesn't feel this or that. It doesn't mean that they didn't come up through all of those stages until they got to an equality of things. They did have to go through all of things. We too have to go through all of these stages. So we shouldn't be frustrated. Like if we don't think we're measuring up, we should not be frustrated. Just need to recognize we have to go through all of these stages, right? And so, and we have to recognize that so does everybody else. And we have to allow them the opportunity to experience these different states. Don't you feel a sense of growth and accomplishment and happiness when something in your mind wasn't quite right gets sorted out, or there's something in your mind that had you a little bit perplexed or confused gets clarified, or that something that didn't even wasn't even a figment in your imagination, suddenly you see it. These are the things that we have to necessarily experience in along the path to come to know our own wisdom. And that arises in us. It arises in us. If there was not the capacity to know, it would never arise. If it wasn't already resident, we would be no way to get it. It's like saying, that an apple tree can grow without an apple seed. It can't. So we should have more confidence in the fourth ennobling truth, which is
Development or
what is the what is the fourth noble truth? Okay, but what is it?
There's a way out of suffering.
There is a path leading out. We should have more confidence in the path leading out. So I think that that's where a lot of us have a little difficulty. Maybe because we're putting confidence in ourselves and we're saying like, well, we're not gonna be able to do this alone, even though it says be a lamp unto your own feet. I mean, but if your bulb is burned out, you need to use somebody else's lamp, okay? And then it'll say, rely only on the Dharma, but you can't rely only on the Dharma unless you're full of the Dharma, unless the Dharma's in you. Otherwise you don't know what you're relying on. It's like you have no reference for the reliance, and that's idiocy, and so we have to start to really almost, if we hear one thing, we have to also recall what else have we heard about that something. And this is how we start moving from a coarse kind of cultivation to a kind of a deep kind of understanding that one can figure out the right measurement for the moment, the right amount of wisdom for the moment that brings together not just the uh, the truth side, but also the compassion side. That becomes a vast container for allowing the Dharma to comfort us in every situation in what we're going through. A vast container to allow the Dharma to comfort others. There's a lot of things that, like, I don't really care about, but if you care about it, I can't say, I don't care about that. Like I won't say I have to pretend I care. But I am saying that I should have a sense of your unrest in it and have some compassion for that. That's what I mean. So, and I find that when I do, and then you're like, how much would you have? When does it move from having compassion to becoming, I don't like the word enabler, because that doesn't like quite, um, that's like victim blaming to me when we talk about being an enabler. It's like there's some fault on the side of the person that's struggling with something, I mean, if there's 13 floors and my elevator only goes up to the 9th floor, that's where I have to get off. I'm not gonna get to the 13th floor. But if I try to get to the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th, and my elevator doesn't go there, then I'm gonna step into some poo. I'm gonna be saying something that's not useful, or that's not beneficial, or that's not kind, or so I have to know how far up my elevator goes, and that's as far as I can, go, But recognize that there might be somebody else who can access the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th floor. Or maybe that person just has to walk up them steps by themselves, you know, because I can only go to the ninth floor, And so we have to recognize limitations. That's a part of the compassion that we have for ourselves and the compassion that we have for others, to not demand they get off on our top floor. Or you could reverse that. My elevator goes up to 13, and maybe yours only goes up to 9. I'm like, you got to get up here to 13. If 9 is as high as they can go, that's as high as they can go. That's it. And my compassion doesn't try to force them to jump off the top of the building. It just lets them abide where they can. So it's this kind of thing that if we get this right, will start showing up in our life. And it won't be so much of what the Dharma says in words, because the words are so inadequate, but it will be what the Dharma says in action, how we actually walk it out with one another. So they talk about the bodhisattvas and how, their words are the actions. They don't say words, but their power of accomplishment and implementation, you know, and that whatever they think, the deed is done. I mean, I just can't imagine what would happen in this world if whatever I thought became the deed. It would be really, really scary. Because I know how I think sometimes, you know. So I know it's not time. I'm glad that doesn't happen. I'm glad I'm so deluded, you know, because but thinking about a bodhisattva, uh, like that whatever their thought is the deed. I mean, like I can see I have to bump up my level of truthfulness. I have to bump up my level of cultivation. I got work to do, you know? I mean, you're not my litmus. I can't compare myself to somebody else, oh, I'm better than them. I mean, that doesn't count. That doesn't count. But if I put myself up against the bright mind of the Bodhisattva, that they're so intertwined with truth itself, that to think a thing is to do it, for it to activate is to be carried out. No. Well, how wonderful that is. And how wonderful that that ain't operating in Pannavati right now, because she ain't 100, you know? So that's a way that we can hold things together as we're growing and as we're learning. So I want to, I think I want to, well, I approach this a little differently. uh, um, you might ask, could there be anything incorrect in the sutras of the Buddha? I tell you what the Buddha said is absolutely correct. However, as a result of transcribing and then translating the Buddha's words, some places in the sutras are wrong. Take, for example, the term shaman human being, which most Buddhists know. The sutras clearly say that only humans have the perfect conditions to cultivate themselves. They clearly say that living beings in the other realms do not have the karmic reward of good fortune to listen to a Buddha personally impart Dharma, that humans attain the most excellent accomplishment, and that it is extremely difficult to attain accomplishment in the other 5 realms. This is an error of principle contained in the sutra collection, actually based on the state of supreme and non-humans. Therefore, to say that only humankind can listen to the true Dharma is extremely selfish speech. Buddha Dharma in the heavenly realms is higher than the Buddha Dharma in the human realm. The heavenly realms have sutras that the human realm does not have. Buddhas and bodhisattvas manifest in various appearances to live among and impart Dharma to living beings in the six realms, whether they are human or whether they are non-human. Thus, I cannot use such meanings of the sutras as my basis to say that only humans can listen to Dharma imparted by Buddhas and bodhisattvas, and that only humans can reach the fastest and the highest accomplishment. This is simply not the Dharma teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha. This is something that patriarchs of later generations got wrong. Disciples, think about it carefully. Could it be that Buddhas and bodhisattvas are compassionate only to the human realms and do not care about living beings in other realms? This is a mistaken view based on not understanding the truth. This is the reason that I cannot teach according to such meanings of the sutras. So that was the basis of my talk today, and it went sideways. But I say this so that we will be more careful in how we think, you know, that we become more compassionate, and that we don't, if Buddha Master will say one thing on page 3, and when you get to page 4, he'll say something different. And if you don't have, if his students in front of him didn't have a perplexed look, he said, "Did you hear what I just said? Now I just said such and such and such, and now I'm saying such a. You didn't even catch that. Isn't this the opposite of that? So he's always checking to see, if so it's okay to have some perplexity. That's what I'm saying. It's through working through the perplexity that we find the clarity and we find the parameters upon which one should think this way or one should think this way. You see, it's no longer, like black and white after a certain point. It becomes all shades of gray, and you have to begin to apply, uh, you have to use your faculties in a different way. I think I want to open it up now. If anybody wants to say anything or ask a question, because your attainment depends on this. Your attainment is coupled with your capacity for vastness, your capacity for boundlessness. We all know something, but depending on how vast what we have a capacity to hold and to penetrate is it's important. When we think we're not when we know we're not doing enough, we can do more. When we know we're trying too hard, we can do less. And it's kind of like that kind of juggling that we have to constantly do, constantly balance to know where we really are. And so the walk down becomes very if I can use the word personal, and you know what I mean by it, becomes very individual. If you, yes.
I had planned to say this on Wednesday because not everybody here today was here last Wednesday. But to those who were here last Wednesday, I want to apologize for my lack of compassion and my judgmentalism and lack of humility. I've spent hours since then contemplating to reach where Venerable spoke today. And so I just want to say that I apologize for my self-righteousness in my speech. And hope you can accept that.
Of course, if they don't, that's their problem, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
didn't get any of that on Wednesday, but
No, but here's the thing, what she was saying is absolutely true. You know, it's just, if you can't get there, then I have to, if you come up 70%, then I'll make up the other 30, you know, to bring you up 100% blameless, lacking in nothing, you know. And we have to learn how to do that. And if she didn't think about it, because she didn't have to say that today, you know, it's just something for her to know and take care of, you know. But the fact that she expressed it shows more of it shows the selflessness and the heart of humility that wants to get something right. You see what I'm saying? That's what I know about her. She's very intense. And you know, right, she gives it her all. So if she gives it her all and it's off, it goes all wrong, or it goes all right, you know, and then we just correct. That's what we do. And so you know. And after a while, it won't bother you. Like I don't tell everything on myself, but I tell some things because I just want to show you how to deal with yourself when you know, and what joy there. I actually find joy in self-correcting. You know, like I don't want you to correct me. You know, if there's some correction involved in it, show me and I'll correct myself. You know. Yeah, and so we shouldn't feel bad about correction. So that's why I say those things all the time, just so that you know how to not bind yourself up and tie yourself up on something and feel bad. Buddha Master said, if you make a mistake, he said, look at that, you know, and don't do it anymore. That's it. And he don't want to hear nothing else about it. You know, be- and we have to do that with ourselves. Otherwise, we will fall into a hole. Why? Because the Dharma is like a shovel, you know, and it starts trenching out that hole. And if the Dharma wasn't digging out that hole, if you stumbled and fell, no problem, you just fall on flat ground. But because the Dharma is digging out that hole for you, when you fall into a hole. You really do. But understand that that's because the Dharma is trenching all around you. So have confidence in the path is what I want to end with. That even when some things feel uncomfortable, we can rejoice in our discomfort. We can rejoice in being uncomfortable even. You know, we can rejoice in and being uncovered because that's exactly what I want. You know, I want the corners cleaned out, you know, and the crevices. like, I had a young man who was, who lived with us. What we learned was not to give him a cleaning chore. Because if he started sweeping the bakery or something, and he saw something, he'd get down with a toothbrush and he'd be all in the groove, and you couldn't stop him. You couldn't stop him because he had, he,
Obsessive.
yeah, obsessive compulsive disorder or something. And I mean, you'd almost have to fight him to get him off of that, you know. And so sometimes we're like that, and we just get there and start trying to clean out that groove, and we can't stop. How much is enough? You have to know your own boundaries. You have to know your own limitations. You have to know your own strengths. There's a song I like so much, and it's called "I Didn't Know My Own Strength." But how wonderful when we really come to know our own strength. How wonderful it is when we really come to know uh, our own inadequacy. How wonderful it is when we really come to know our own arrogance or our own conceit. It's wonderful to know it, because then we can work on it. We can't work on anything that we don't know. And then when somebody comes along and accuses you of something, like, you can know for yourself whether that's true or whether that's just in their mind. One time somebody said to me, maybe you don't know as much as you think you know. I said, maybe you think that I think I know when I don't think I know. Mm. And so, so knowing, we come up to where we stop. To know the Dharma is to know who.
Yourself.
Yeah. You could just sum it up like that. To know the Dharma is to know oneself. Now, and if we just stay with that a little bit, like, I wanna know myself. I want to know myself. Yeah. And we use it so much in a sense of trying to figure out others, and that does not relieve us from our suffering. Knowing ourselves and knowing the path is what will free us from suffering. It's when I am strong in myself, I carry myself. I don't diminish myself. I walk in that strength. When I am weak, the Dharma carries me. And knowing which is which is what we have to figure out. Well, that's all. That's all I got today. So I know this is a little early. If anybody has anything they'd like to say, you're welcome, ma'am. Otherwise, I'm going to close out.
You have that same look on that poster that you had over there. You have that same look you had on that poster you had at Hardwood, just like that.
Picture of you.
Oh,
All that cameo.
well, I'm happy in the Dharma today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Close. Somebody offer dedicate merit, please. Lucy.
Dedicate the merit from our time together today to all beings in the 6 realms who are suffering and who are seeking freedom. May all beings find their way to liberation and freedom from all sufferings.